Welcome back to Autism at Home, brought to you by us at Early Autism Project Malaysia through our non-profit initiative, The Hope Project. My name is Joshabet Isaacs and it's so nice to see you again. And I am here today with Yu Chen, one of our senior supervisors at EAP.
Welcome to the 20th series of Autism at Home on community trips. The previous lesson on introduction highlighted the specific challenges that may occur in the community. From this lesson to the final lessons of this series, we will unravel the more specific challenges, teaching strategies and guidelines to increase your child's success when they dine out, do grocery shopping, visit shopping malls, go to the playground, as well as trips to the cinemas, doctors, and to the dentist. In this lesson, we'll be speaking specifically on eating out.
Going to have a meal in a restaurant is something most families would do quite regularly. Typically, families with much younger children, like babies or toddlers, would anticipate certain challenges, and oftentimes for children on the spectrum, eating out may not be as straightforward as we think. For example, there are certain expectations, such as everyone sitting nicely in their seats. That means not walking around and certainly not running around, not touching breakable items or around hot foods especially. Then everyone is able to tolerate waiting for the food that they ordered, or maybe even not being able to get what they want if it's unavailable or perhaps too expensive. Everyone speaking politely at an inside voice volume, and then hopefully to get through the meal without screen time. And of course, the area of food tolerance is quite the challenge when it comes to many children on the autism spectrum to have that variety of food and to be willing to try new foods.
Wow, that is quite a list of expectations just to eat out, and we so often take it for granted as adults. But when it comes to our kiddos with autism, we really need to see things from their perspective and look at some of these very real potential challenging behaviors when going out for a meal. Let's recap the color code table earlier with some specific examples when it comes to eating out. So, yellow behaviors would look like difficulty in sensory related, such as covering their ears, eyes, or refusal to move, and the list goes on, touching items or people, or even grabbing, self-stimulatory behaviors that may be disruptive, meltdowns, and tantrums. Some red behaviors would include dangerous and safety-related ones, such as wandering off and dashing, self-injurious and aggressive to people or property, dangerous behavior near high-risk areas such as climbing high places or jumping off escalators. And finally, code black would be life-threatening, such as a child going missing.
Let's also recap why these behaviors may happen. Remember, on the DSM-5, in the category of deficits in social communication, we're talking about difficulty in communicating. A child may not understand what is happening, may not be able to communicate their own needs. Then there can be a lack of understanding expectations, and that being difficulty understanding those social expectations and concepts like safe and dangerous, personal space, or even the concept of money. Then, for example, understanding the need to order and even wait for the food. Then in the area of difficulty in cooperation, difficulty with listening and following parents' instructions. For example, staying seated at the table throughout that meal. In the area of category B, which are those restricted, repetitive behaviors, let's look at sensory first. Difficulty with possibly bright lights or the sounds or the smells, a new place, crowds, maybe some inflexibilities and specific interests. A child may find it difficult to cope with waiting for their meal, or maybe changes to the meal, or maybe even not being able to get the meal that they wanted. Then in the area of obsessive or fixated interest in certain items or even people, resulting in a child perhaps dashing to get an item or even grabbing something. For example, taking someone else's food from a different table, as well as trying new foods. In the area of self-stimulatory behaviors, a child may demonstrate hand flapping, licking, spinning, walking on tiptoes, and verbal stimming.
Okay, so let's recap the 5 key community skills. Ability to cooperate, ability to be flexible, ability to tolerate, two-way communication, and teaching actual expectations. Therefore, we hope that you have already worked on cooperation in Unit 4, flexibility in Unit 7, and areas of tolerance in Unit 15, specifically to sounds, crowds, and new places, as well as communication in Unit 5. If you haven't, we would suggest starting with those basics first.
Then, when it comes to number 5, the actual expectations, we need to remember our 3 key ABA strategies: break skills down, reinforce, and repeat, as well as 90% of our focus on preventative and teaching strategies, and only 10% on reactive strategies. Now, how do we break skills down? This means that we want to take a complex skill and to simplify it so that we can start where the child is successful. It also may mean to work on one aspect of the complex skill at a time, and also to ensure that a child has the prerequisite skills for what we're teaching. So let's just break that down a bit further, shall we? To actually eat in a restaurant, we just talked about a number of different areas of skills that a child needs to learn. The actual ability to just sit at the table to eat. Then increasing the time that a child is able to sit at the table to eat. Perhaps the ability to eat independently. Perhaps the ability to eat without a screen, especially for the kiddos who always eat in front of the TV. Perhaps increasing the variety of food that the child is able to eat, especially for children with limited food repertoire. Then including some flexibility challenges, such as practicing waiting for the food, tolerating if their favorite food is not available, and the list goes on. Then you add on a bit of sensory and tolerance related challenges such as loud sounds or lights or even the smells of the food and the crowds, not to mention new restaurants. Then maybe you even want to practice the language and social skills of ordering a meal. For children who are nonverbal, they could be taught to use a device to communicate.
Whoa, that's 8 different areas of breaking the skills of dining out. So we want to start with just one area, right, Joe?
Yeah.
And in this case, before we start the actual practice of dining out at the restaurant, we start at home. That's right, because the home does not come with the sensory-related challenges of a new place, crowd, and you can control the noise and lights at home. So before a child is able to sit for a meal at a table in the restaurant, can a child sit to eat at a dining table at home? And importantly, for just a short period of time, start where your child is successful. Maybe 5 minutes or maybe even just 1 to 2 minutes. Or you could track it by spoons of food. Maybe just 1 spoon and then 2 spoons. And of course, one last point. With the concept of break skills down, we also need to check that a child has the prerequisite skills to be able to even start learning this. And that is essentially cooperation in this case.
The next key ABA strategy is reinforcement. Identify your child's strongest reinforcement. Ideally, it would be great to build this up to natural reinforcement at a restaurant, such as desserts. But again, we want to start successful, so if the iPad is the strongest reinforcer and your child usually sits to eat with an iPad or screen time, try to use the first then visual to communicate: first eat, then iPad. You can gradually increase it to first eat 2 bites, then iPad, then 3 bites, then iPad, and gradually increase more and more.
And of course, the last key ABA strategy is practice. There are naturally 3 opportunities to practice at home, which are breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But you could additionally practice during snack times too. So that could be about 5 times a day. And actually, for some children who are more affected with autism and take longer to learn, we would practice this skill during their therapy as well.
And don't forget that when it's actually time to practice in the real restaurant, the more frequent but short meals at the restaurant, the more successful practices you're going to give your child. And so that brings us to our last point on 90% energy on preventative and teaching strategies and only 10% on reactive strategies. All that we just explained earlier under breaking skills down are teaching strategies, whereby you need to teach your child each one of those maybe 8 expectations or more, not to mention the other prerequisites like cooperation, flexibility, tolerance, and two-way communication.
So, next is actually preventative, all brought to you by the letter P. Plan your trip, prepare your child, practice at home, pack your bag, and prepare for the worst. First, let's look at planning your trip. Pop quiz. When you want to take your child to eat out in a restaurant, do you choose your favorite place on a Saturday afternoon for lunch in the busiest mall nearby where there's no parking, no space to sit, and it is very crowded? Yes or no? No. Always remember to choose a location your child will be successful at, preferably a smaller restaurant with your child's favorite foods, and during a time that is non-peak so it is less crowded, less noisy, and easier for your child to tolerate. Of course, you also want to think easy transitions into the restaurant so your parking is nearby, better yet, just outside the restaurant, and you can walk right in.
That's right. Additionally, you could even call the restaurant in advance. Pre-order the food and double-check if there's anything you are concerned about. For example, do they have any special events or perhaps overbooking? Are your child's favorite food available, etc.? It's really good to call in advance because sometimes the restaurant may be closed for whatever reason or even run out of your child's favorite dish. So that way you can avoid a mini crisis. So what about another quick pop quiz? When Yuchen said plan your trip, which key ABA strategy is that? Break skills down, pair with reinforcement, or provide sufficient practice? That's right, it's breaking skills down.
Secondly, prepare your child. In the 5 key community skills, item 4 is two-way communication, and you want to ensure that you're able to communicate to your child in a way your child understands, and visuals are very powerful for this. The basic visuals you could have are a social story. This communicates the key details in a simple way that your child can understand. Visual schedule. A simple visual schedule of the steps for the trip would be very helpful to communicate the expectations clearly. Visual rule card. This would also be very helpful, and the community skills basics would be stay with me, listen to parents, and nice hands, but specific to dining out would be sitting at a table, waiting for food and eat. Visual token board. This could be a simple first stand card where your child can see that first eat, then reward. You could actually include all 4 of the above into the one social story so you do not have so much to carry around. And of course, you can also make a video model or use a video model to show your child the expectations. And don't forget that your child needs to be able to communicate to you as well. And it would be great if you have the basic visuals that are accessible to your child to communicate for a break, a snack, water, toilet, or screen time.
Thirdly, practice at home. You could start straight away at the dining table, or if it's easier, then start at the learning table for better cooperation. Read the social story, go over the visual schedule and rules, and then proceed to pretend to order from the pretend menu, pretend to wait, and then to eat. Now remember, we may need to break this down in further detail. For example, start with just eating at the table first, and then only the pretend ordering and waiting.
Fourthly, pack your bag. Here's a simple checklist. Social stories with visual schedules and rules. Strong rewards. Activities to occupy time and redirect. And of course, the usual snacks, water bottle, and change of clothes.
Lastly, prepare for the worst. Now, before the crisis happens, be it code yellow, red, or black, you want to try to prevent it as much as possible. And essentially, all the steps we have just given should help set your child up for a successful event. Have items that can occupy your child during the waiting period. Some of these include busy books, sticker sheets, simple board games, or a more rewarding item, the iPad. Be mindful though that the iPad could also cause a tantrum if your child is not able to give it up. It is important that your child is familiar and successful with these activities at home before practicing in the real situation at the restaurant. These items could also be what you'd redirect your child to in the event of a meltdown.
Speaking of that, 10% of energy on reactive strategies, and so in the event your child has code yellow, such as tantrums and meltdowns, or even code red, aggressive behaviors, you can try your best to not give attention and try to redirect to a more functional activity. But if it does progress to the red, a natural consequence would be to leave and go home. But don't fret, you can always regroup and try again. You can do a debrief with your family members or team about what had taken place and how to help them cope better. Once the plan is adapted based on the analysis, you can reattempt, or if you feel your child is maybe just not yet ready, break down the skills and teach all the prerequisite skills first.
Okay, so last pop quiz. Your child has a very limited food repertoire and only eats maybe French fries. But you want to teach him to eat a variety of food. And so you decide to bring him to a food court where there is a large variety of food choices. Do you think that your child will be successful? Yes, as he will have the opportunity to be exposed to so many different foods? Or no, as there will be too many demands and expectations on him? From the potential sensory overload at a food court, from the crowd, more noisy, more smells due to the variety of foods, and the list goes on, to the actual huge challenge of trying a new food when he only has one food he's willing to eat. We really hope that after all we have taught you, that your answer was B. Our first key strategy is to break skills down and to set our kiddos up to be successful. Food tolerance is a different topic altogether and can be very challenging, but definitely to do a gradual desensitization. And if you wanted to expose your child to different foods, you can always have a variety of foods on the dining table, at home, all the time.
Now it's your turn. Firstly, review how well your child does at the following 5 key community skills. All the time, sometimes, or not at all. Ability to cooperate, ability to be flexible, ability to tolerate, two-way communication, and understanding of actual expectations. Number 2, what do you need to teach your child and how can you start successfully? The actual ability to sit at the table to eat. Increasing the time that a child is able to sit at the table to eat. Teaching to eat independently. Teaching to eat without screen time. Increasing variety of food. Flexibility challenges such as waiting for food, tolerating if food is not available. Sensory and tolerance-related challenges such as loud sounds, lights, smells, crowds, or new restaurants. Language and social skills of ordering a meal. Lastly, plan your trip to the restaurant. Choose a successful location, prepare your key materials, and proceed with the practice.
Well, that's it for this lesson on eating out. Remember the key strategies of break skills down, reinforce, and practice, as well as 90% preventative and teaching strategies, resulting in hopefully only 10% reactive. And before you go to the restaurant, remember to plan your trip, prepare your child, practice at home, pack your bag, and prepare for the worst.
Thank you for your support, and with the amount of interest we have received online, we have actually started providing online services and currently work with clients in other states of Malaysia, New Zealand, Philippines, Singapore, Switzerland, Indonesia, China, and Brunei as well. So do scan this QR code and get in touch with us for more information.
And if you haven't already, do check out our free online resource platform, Autism at Home, which has all the corresponding articles and downloadables for you. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram and Facebook to stay updated. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.